Welcome on, everyone. It is episode number 28 of KC Grid Talk. My name is Emory, and I'm joined, as always, tonight by my two co-hosts. First off, we've got Alexander Searle back again. Alex, another trip to Newcastle this weekend coming up, another chance to see the main national layout. It's a track that you've won on before. You've had a lot of fun. What are you feeling coming into this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, right? This is the normal layout. This is like the layout when you go to Newcastle. You can't go wrong with it. Obviously, we'll get into it. I'd love to at some point see the Super Mile. I want to see, the ski jump come back. But this is probably of all the normal layouts we go to, this is my favorite one. And usually the racing action is pretty good.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk about everything layouts and more tonight. We've got a couple special guests. We've got a couple big talking points to go through tonight. But before we get to those, Kaleb Vieska, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. Just wrapped up the final weekend of the Texas Racing Series at Emory Kart Complex. Very well run event where it was a good one. It was an up and down weekend. It was raining. It was cold at one point, which is kind of weird being in the desert of Texas. So that was the craziest part, but a huge shout out to Jesus Vasquez Jr., who was able to get it done, and Bryce Frank, both of them getting it done in 2:06 and in KA Senior. And then obviously shout outs to Reagan Seville and Aiden Rudolph, who finished just shy of their championships. But it was a good weekend. Just kind of resting up from that. Got home yesterday and just been resting since that, and then just got ready for tonight's show.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, shout out to the four guys that made two very fun championship battles in the two major senior categories. Also, quick shout out to Big Red himself. Xander Clements had a generational run through heat number 1, I believe it was, on Saturday,
Yep.
no? In the
Yeah,
rain.
he from 22nd to 7th, so not bad for an old man. He
Yeah.
drove through the field and did a good job. So it was cool to see Xander work his way through the field on Saturday.
Yeah, we saw some comparisons to Ayrton Senna from that drive. So no, it was a great drive from him. Really a great weekend to see with the different weather conditions. I felt like the racing was really good and honestly really clean considering the conditions, considering the circumstances. So hats off to everyone down there. Alex and I both had the weekend off, so we were not able to enjoy the final round at Amarillo. But one thing we are going to enjoy, and it's one thing that we were just talking about, and I asked Alex this on the intro, is this weekend at the United States Pro Karting Series. You can see, apologies for the slight overlap on the image, but that is the normal track layout at the Castle Motorsports Park. You can see back to the 16 corner layout featuring I-70 going in the, it would be the counterclockwise direction. This layout that they ran for, I believe, the first 7 years at USPKS, and then obviously 2022, 2023 as well. So, Alex, I already got your feedback on this track, but Kaleb, I believe this might be the first race you're working that you second race with this layout. The first one would have been
last year, 2023, where Austin Garrison walked the
that's
field.
right.
I was working a camera that weekend, but no, I mean the track races quite well. I just remember some of the key points from last year. I've raced, I would say, half of this layout maybe without, I guess, the full run down onto the straightaway. So I think it's a good, fast, very fast flowing racetrack. Some of the key points are obviously going into what would be the final corner in turn 17. Obviously, we saw a lot of wrecks last year. Side by side action. A lot of drivers ending up in the grass, like Braden Eves, Ryan Orberg crashed there last year, and KA as well, where Eves crashed with Gabriel as well in that in their final. So I think this track really delivers some great racing. I'm excited to see it, and it's a big championship weekend as well. So I'm excited to see something different at Newcastle. I think it was a bit, repetitive with Scusa and with Stars running the same layout. So it was, that layout was good, but I think seeing something different is always pretty cool.
Yeah, it's actually kind of ironic that they're at this point going back to the normal layout is something different, because for 8 years or so, it felt like every single national series that went to Newcastle always ran the same layout every single time, and people got tired of it. But now it's like the old
Yeah.
layout kind of has its charm back a bit. And Alex, I mean, we've talked about it before with the Super Mile, but I mean, do you really, if you had to build, say, 3 national races a year at Newcastle, what 3 layouts would you choose to make it most optimal?
I would choose this layout. I would choose probably the Super Mile, and then from there, I'd probably go, what is it, backwards Grand Nats layout with like you cut through I-80 or I-80 corner, and then you had the Monza as well.
I thought it's I-70, no?
I-70,
I was
I-70.
gonna say,
Backwards? But you're
I
saying
was
backwards as in like
So
the way
back,
they're
like
running
so
it this
clock,
weekend?
so clockwise,
Mm,
Grand's layout.
clock
yeah.
go into turn 1 being I-70,
Yeah, that'd
basically.
be with like 70 go-karts just barreling down there.
Huh.
Oh man. It's fun in turn 1 there. But yeah, no. I think a lot of things you can do with Newcastle layouts, but back to the basics for Newcastle Motorsports Park. Another couple notes this weekend. First off, the return of Aiden Ingrata in the X30 field. There's 14 total pre-entries. This time he's with Rawlson Performance Group with Raleigh, racing an RPG Cosmic. Kaleb, it's been a while since we've seen Ingrata on the national scene. What were your thoughts on that entry list that you saw earlier this week?
Well, it surprised us, a little bit. Obviously, Aiden had big history of running with Mike Speed, and then he moved teams at the start of the year whenever he was racing the Road Tax Winter Trophy. And again, he's still wicked quick, and you can only imagine how quick he's going to be under that RPG Cosmic with teammates Ryan Norberg and um, their entire camp this weekend. So you can only expect Aiden to be wicked quick and be a factor whenever you get into championship battles. And again, Aiden's just coming here to win the race. He's not worried about championship, or probably going to be here to help Ryan a little bit or whatnot. But yeah, it was good to see his name on the list. He's ran USF juniors this year, so it was good to see him do that. But good to have him back in karting. Good to have him back and good to see him back in the seat this weekend.
Alex, any extra thoughts?
Oh, it's always good to see returning drivers, especially the caliber of Ingrata. I think he's going to put on a pretty good show for us. I mean, he hasn't been in the kart seat racing quite often, but I'm sure he's done some testing. He's going to come prepared, and like you said, he's coming to win. And if anything, he's going to maybe help Ryan out a little bit in terms of just putting one driver between himself and maybe Garrison, for example. But I think you mentioned it, Kaleb, right? This is the exact layout that Garrison walked the field last year on. So
Yep.
I'm sure Austin's coming in with some confidence as well. So I think we're in for a decent championship battle. I think Austin right now is the favorite. I don't want to say too soon, but he's coming in with a decent points lead. So right now it's him, ADT, Norberg, going after it. So yeah, you mentioned, what was it, 14 entries I think pre. So not as many drivers as you want to see in terms of if you're ADT, Norberg, who need more drivers in the mix to maybe shuffle Garrison and others back. But I think it's going to be a pretty stout field nonetheless.
Absolutely. And another key story, the last one before we get into the real show where the fun begins. Brandon Lemke back in a KA this weekend, listed as a privateer. I believe he might be working on an effort with BJR MDR. Not entirely sure on that. We'll have to figure that out once we get to the track on Thursday. But regardless, Lemke back in the KA after a season of running in X30 on USPKS. Alex, I mean, the last time we saw Lemke race KA at this track, he was up front. We've seen him win before. I mean, what are your expectations for Brandon coming into this weekend?
Stay out of trouble. I think he's been one of the most unlucky drivers all year long, no matter what class he races in. So he's a guy, whether it's X30, whether it's KA, we expect him to be at the front. And usually the only reasons he's not there is a bad heat, bad qualifying, something happens that's maybe out of his control. So I think for Lemke, if he can stay out of trouble, the expectation is to win. At least a top 5 for sure. I mean, like you mentioned, back in the KA, always good to see Brandon in the KA. Where he's really, I think, made the name for himself, and then he went for the X30 a couple of times in the past couple of years, and he's been quick, but usually one of the fastest guys in the K.
Absolutely. And so again, Brandon Lemke back in the K. One guy that when you think of Merlin in the mid 2010s and the success that they had, right up there with Brandon, Alex Bertagnoli joining the show tonight. Alex, not at Newcastle this weekend, different different circumstances. You'll be at SCCA runoffs, but talk me through how your year's been going. You've been on the race directing side, and what's it been like kind of being back at the kart track yet again?
Yeah, it's been great. In terms of what I've been racing this year, it's been all spec Miata stuff, kind of more local. I've only done a handful of events in the SCCA Hoosier Super Tour, and it's gone really well. And at the beginning of the season, Blake texted me and asked if I wanted to work for Mark and race direct, and I said absolutely, because I've kind of been looking for a way to get back involved in karting, because I've been away for a while. I haven't been behind the wheel of a go-kart in 2-3 years now, which sounds crazy to me because I've driven go-karts my whole life. But yeah, no, it's been really awesome. We have a solid group for USPKS, and I've had a lot of fun doing it.
Absolutely. And you mentioned being in kart racing pretty much your whole life. I mean, talk to me about the Alex Bertagnoli story, because it's been a couple of years since we've really seen you on the national scene, and we haven't really gotten a chance to go through everything. But up until a couple of years ago, pretty much year after year, you were always up there at the forefront of the national scene. So walk us through kind of where you got started and kind of where things led to where you are now.
Sure, yeah. So my dad, back in the 80s and 90s, raced super bikes, and my uncle drag races for fun. He's got a 68 Thunderbird. He loves it. And so my kind of like my origins is racing. My dad's side of the family, that's what they're all about. I started, and he bought me my first go-kart when I was 5 years old. I went to Michiana Raceway Park, or MRP, if you guys remember that, of course. And started doing some local racing at Badger Kart Club in Dousman. And we kind of just did it for fun for a few years. But as I got a little bit better, my dad felt it was time to kind of challenge ourselves if we're going to keep doing this. So we started racing series like Great Lakes Sprint Series when that was a thing. And that kind of led to racing WK Man Cup, and then to Route. And then, that's when USPKS was introduced back in, I think it was either 2013 or 2014. And started racing with Jamie Siraki at FMS. And, we had a really awesome couple of years together and had a lot of success. And then that kind of led to running with J3 for the short time, and then also running with Kart Sport North America with Eric Jones for a while. So it's been quite the run, and honestly, I there's a lot of days where I do miss the go-kart paddock and the memories and the success that I had racing go-karts. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you look back at this track in particular at Newcastle, I feel like, at least from what I can remember, some of the best moments you've had, I would say, have been at this exact racetrack. You clinched a KA championship here in 2017. At the height of RPG's initial dominance with Norberg in 2019, I believe you were the only person to beat him in a main event over the span of Pro Tour and USPKS at this track. So, I mean, what kind of special memories do you have from Newcastle beyond those race wins, and kind of like what does this track remind you of when you look back at it in your karting days?
Well, if I'm being honest, man, I think I took Newcastle for granted, because back in the day we were going there. It was the most common track that we went to throughout the season. I swear we were going there like 4 or 5 times a year, and we were all just getting sick of it. But I remember it was when we started going backwards and they started introducing their new layouts. It was like awesome that we got something new out of it. But it was also fun because I was always fortunate enough to have a really solid X30 motor. So and obviously Newcastle, you need, it helps to have a good motor. So but looking back on it now, I really took that for granted, kind of getting sick of Newcastle, I guess, because I mean that's one of the best tracks in the country. I mean, come on now. Doing the super mile, doing even the regular layout. I mean, it's one of my favorite tracks, and it made for some great racing. So, I miss it, and I'm looking forward to seeing USPKS go there for the last event this year, and I think it should be great.
Yeah. Now, if you were running a series, we're not quite there yet. We got the assistant race director tag going for you right now. But if you were running a race series, which layout would you choose for one race around Newcastle?
It would have to be just the regular layout that they're running with this weekend. I'm super happy to see that they're going back.
Lame.
Wrong answer.
Wrong answer.
What would you guys say?
It's the ski jump layout, man. It's the only answer.
100%.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know, dude. The original layout, that's like the OG, man. I mean, come on. That's what we did for years before, and then the Super Mile was kind of like seemed like kind of like an all-star race almost. But I come on, man. The OG layout, that has a special place in my heart.
All right. I guess you know what, Alex and I have been glazing this layout a little bit too hard, so we'll let this one go.
I think
And
OG is probably the best layout in terms of just getting the best racing product. But if I had to pick like a layout to go out there and do a qualifying lap, it'd be ski jump. But for sure, like the normal layout, what we're driving on this weekend basically is probably the best. This or just this layout going clockwise are the two best layouts for actual like racing product, in my opinion.
No, I agree, man. I think in terms of from like just a driving aspect, just a qualifying lap or, just going out and doing laps, having fun, I definitely think the ski jump is the way to go. But in terms of having some really good racing and, having a bunch of people up front and I don't know, just the way the track flows going the normal way, I think that's the best. I mean, nothing beats it.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess one other thing before I let the boys kind of ask their own questions. I know Alex probably has a good bit, Kaleb as well. You come back to the karting scene this year. You work with the USPKS officials. You mentioned how kind of Blake hit you up about race directing towards the end of last year into this year. Kind of how has that changed your perspective when it comes to looking at these races and instead of being behind the wheel like you've been for so long and doing a little bit of driver coaching here and there, now suddenly kind of watching the whole racing scheme and watching everything that's going on?
I'm not really sure how much it's changed my perspective, but I think that it's definitely it's taught me a lot about man, that's a good question, man. Because it definitely hasn't really changed my perspective, but it's been really cool to be in a position kind of, I don't want to say behind the scenes, but kind of just seeing where what certain drivers do when it comes to certain points of the race. And I don't think I haven't been, it's my first year doing it. I don't think I've been perfect, but I've had a lot of fun doing it. I think it's fun to make sure that drivers are performing to the standard which USPKS has set for many years now. And yeah, I think it's been really fun. It's not super high stress for me because I've been doing this crap for so long, so I kind of understand what's expected from everybody. But honestly, it's been a really good time, and I'm hoping to do it next year if I have the time to do it.
Well, you talk about the standard, a little bit of driving and whatnot. I mean, you've been in karting for a very long time. You've moved into cars, right? But you still kind of missed the karting scene. You're back in it doing race directing. How have you noticed the shift in driving standards compared to like where you started karting and then the progression to where it is now?
Oh, well, if I'm being transparent, I just feel like there's based on what I've seen and not only watching the stream but working for Mark and everything, it seems like there's almost been a little bit of a loss of respect, especially in the mid pack. I just don't remember. Obviously the racing back when I was full time was very aggressive, but I just don't remember seeing the amount of bump and runs that I see now, and there's so much contact, and these kids are just. It just seems like these kids are killing each other half the time, and I just think, I don't really know how that came about, and I kind of miss seeing what it was like when I was in the seat full time, especially up front. It just seemed like there was a lot more respect for each other. Like even if the guy in second knew he was going to lose on the last lap, he wasn't just going to dive bomb going full speed into the side of the leader just to win the race. I feel like you see a lot more of that now. So yeah, I wish that the guys would have a little bit more respect for each other. Based off what I've seen, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I was going to ask you, what do you think the solution is then? Because we've seen it across the board, no matter what series. It seems like that's kind of like what you expect, right? Somebody's going to white line lap 3 and beyond because they know they can do it and get away with it. Because if the kid behind them dumps him, he's going to get a pushback. So then his race is over. And then, like you mentioned, there's just it seems like, and I agree with you on the aspect of a little bit less respect now for a driver. If you're having a battle, it seems like you're gonna run them out of road. The driver in second is not going to boot you out the way. What do you think is the solution, if there is one?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, as a race director, I mean, I feel like the first thing that you think of is, getting a little bit more harsh on penalties, but, honestly, that just doesn't seem like that's made a huge change. So like, honestly, I'm thinking about that question still. I mean, I'm not really sure what the solution is and, kind of where the loss of respect came from, but yeah, that's a good question, man. I mean, I really don't know.
Bring back
What
the
do you
metal
what
rear
do you
bumpers.
yeah, and I'm getting into that right now. What do you think about the pushback system that's in place now? Like, have you thought that it's effective in the way that we're stopping all the contact or all the bumping run through the corners, or what are your honest, serious thoughts about the pushback bumper that there's in place now? Because I know you've been in the seat of giving penalties for stuff like that as well.
I think it's a little bit of a controversial topic. I mean, I think in terms of like the start when guys are checking up and guys are getting pushback bumpers on before the race even starts, I think that's really silly. And I think that's why it's important to have a camera on the cart so you can catch that. And as an official, if you're getting a pushback bumper just because some guy in front of you just slammed on the brakes, like I'm not gonna penalize you for that. Like I just think that's a little
Yeah.
bit silly. But
Yeah, but to me, there's the caveat to that's like there's definitely drivers who purposely on like the outlap or on the on the starts push their bumper in and then just get it overturned because they have the camera saying the guy brake checked them, and they become like a batting ram the rest of the race. So that to me is like the one. It's such a fine line with the pushback because I think in some aspects it's worked, and in some aspects it's created the issue of you know pushback lap one, get it overturned because the guy brake checked them fair, but now the rest of the race they can go and just punch something out the way. The pushback's already in, so no, there's no proof that it would have been pushed in anyways. You know what I'm saying?
no, I agree, man. I think it definitely has its pros and cons. I mean, if you're using that as a strategy to kind of have an advantage over another driver, then it's ridiculous. But I think it's helped in terms of like, those close battle scenarios where kids are just killing each other. I think it
Yeah.
helps there because I mean, of course, you should deserve a penalty if you just smoke somebody off the racetrack. And I think that's where the bumper has been a little bit more useful. But in terms of like the strategy of like some people like brake checking another driver like at the beginning or even late in the race, I think that's when the pushback bumper is not very useful and
Exactly.
quite silly, in fact. Yeah.
So exactly to proceed with that point, like you have what you had last time out at MCC, where your entire junior field is in a single file line, white lining the entire race. What do you think the solution is to that? Because obviously the pushback bumpers to me, it seems like whoever it is in the lead or whoever the kid is leading, they're going to just go to the bottom of the racetrack because they know they can't get moved out of the way, because if they get pushed or pushed out of the way, then that bumper gets pushed in, obviously. So what do you think, I guess, a system or a fix is to honestly I need to reword it in my head.
Well, I think because I was gonna ask the same thing. I
Yeah.
mean, is there leeway, or should there be leeway if somebody lap 5 decides to bottom of the racetrack the rest of the race, knowing that the guy behind him can't move him? Should there be a little bit of leeway of, okay, it's been 4 laps now. There's 25 go-karts behind him. Should the guy in second be allowed to, I don't know, just oops, missed the brake zone slightly and move him up the racetrack? Because we saw it at MCC, like you mentioned, Kaleb.
Yeah.
We only had basically 2 lead changes for like 15 laps because the guys in third, fourth, and fifth were stuck there. I mean, to me, like there should be, if there is, a little bit of leeway of, okay, it's been a couple of laps now. Maybe we should be allowed to use that front bumper slightly to move them up.
Well, before I answer that question, I was very impressed by that race. I mean,
It
I
was
thought
awesome.
that
Yeah.
was the most memorable race of the weekend for me in regards to, standing in turn 4. And I was actually surprised to see the amount of respect that those guys had for each other. Literally the whole field was bunched up and they were white lining the entire time.
But I think the respect came more from the fact that they knew they couldn't move each other.
Yeah, I agree. And but I think I don't know, it's hard for me to answer that being in position of a race director, but I guess if I was driving like and some guy, especially if it's not for the lead and you're getting held up, yeah, I'm gonna use the bumper a little bit. I'm gonna kind of nudge you a little bit, even if that just means getting up next to you. I'm gonna let you know I'm there, uh, but yeah, I mean that's I think that's controversial, and honestly, I think the pushback bumper helps in that scenario, but
100%, 100%.
But like I said before, I was so impressed by that junior race. I mean, it was incredible not to see those guys just kill each other, and it got a little scrappy at the end. But I mean, of course it's gonna get scrappy. I mean, you got 20 guys battling for the lead, so yeah, I mean, that was pretty cool.
I think you made a good point of in situations where there's 15 go-karts stacked up, the pushback's actually beneficial. But I think in situations where it's maybe 3 or 4 carts in the mix, then you lose the aspect of the pushback because it's pretty obvious if somebody moves somebody in that sort of situation. But in a pack of 15, I mean, the kid in 15 doesn't have to use the brakes and just move everybody to the racetrack, and then he gets pushback. And so the pushback then tells you, okay, that guy moved somebody, that's a penalty. Where you wouldn't probably see it to the naked eye, the guy in 14th in the train moving somebody, you wouldn't even notice the train move. So I agree. What were you going to say, Emory?
I was gonna say the only thing that I think of is like if I look back at every time I've gotten a pushback, almost none of the times have been when I actually like moved someone. Like
I can touch that one too.
Like yeah, like there's been the pushback system for what 7 years at this point, and I think
everybody's got it figured out at this point. Like everybody's got it figured out.
I'm not gonna say exactly like the exact methodology, but you have to like punch someone pretty hard for like intentional contact to cause a pushback. And I guess that was kind of what I was thinking on the race directing side is like the pushback for me is great, like Alex mentioned, when there's like big train of go-karts and like someone just egregiously like drives through the train. But I don't know if it solves the marginal contact issue of having like someone just like discarding someone a little bit, you know? And it's a tough line. And honestly, like I think another thing that I think of is also the pushback bumper started when race directing wasn't quite as like the systems weren't as developed as they are now. Like USPKS has expanded their race directing system. Stars and SCUSA both have cameras. So I don't know. Alex, I was wondering if you like first off, my joke question earlier of do you think the metal bumpers should make a comeback?
So I was just about to bring that up. Well, what I was gonna say first is like I really don't know if you're absolutely correct on how the race directing has improved, but I just don't know what the result would be if you took away the pushback bumper because I feel like the standard of driving like 10 years ago or 7 years ago, it was so much different
clean
than it is today.
Way more clean.
Yeah, so like I just don't know how that would go. Like I feel like you'd have, the TV that they have at the scale line now. I just feel like that would be freaking filled top to bottom but then again, I don't know because I haven't raced in the field in a couple of years. But to your point of bringing back the metal bumpers, I think that would scare the crap out of people. And because I know it scared the crap out of me back when I was
it made for cleaner racing.
Yeah. So
what do you think about like just like plain and simple, like no contact, like you're not allowed to touch anybody else's rear bumper or that's like an automatic penalty. And like, again, it takes the aspect of like karting being a contact sport, but it seems like we're getting real close to that where it's like, you know what? Yeah. Cause I after racing CKNA, like you're not allowed to be on anybody else's rear bumper when the race starts. You like need to be completely off it. And you can't even draft in qualifying, whatever. So what do you think of just like complete, like no contact, like no touching?
I feel like that's a little bit too strict. Just because in a go-kart you're dealing with plastic bumpers, you have the ability to like use them and like you have the ability to make contact without wrecking yourself. It's not like Formula One where they make any sort of contact. You can't make contact with people, otherwise your race is probably going to be over.
Yes. So like that guides me to my next point, right? Like all these kids are probably going to end up wanting to go race Formula wheels. And Alex, you have experience of racing 1600s as well behind like, in your past. Like, shouldn't we not be getting these kids into the, rhythm of, you know what, like whenever you 2 years from now, if you do make contact with somebody else, you're probably going to be on your head. You know what I mean? In an F1600 or either Formula cars or whatever it is. So like, why do you think it's not ideal to
Well,
to get them
to me, that's where the metal bumper comes back into play.
I was
Rather
gonna say the same thing.
rather than the pushback or no contact, you go back to the old school bumpers where contact involves getting on your lid or pushed off the racetrack. Uh, you agree, Alex?
No, yeah, I was gonna say, like, if that, I think that, taking contact out of the scenario is a little bit too strict because it's gonna happen no matter what. I mean, you just can't deny that. But I feel like a step in the right direction would be making it more difficult to, make contact with other drivers, which is where a metal bumper would, of course, prevent that. But man, that would be quite the change, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd never hear the end of it. It brings me back to when they first introduced pushbacks. Like part of the idea was, oh, this is going to improve driving standards and kind of keep people in check. And I feel like we look back 7 years later, and objectively, the driving standards have gotten worse. And you just wonder, like, have they inherently found the root of the issue, but not really solved it with this pushback?
They got to get kids off TikTok, man. They're just too impatient. I swear,
Yeah.
that's what
Hey,
it is.
it's a good TikTok highlight, really.
We got to bring back Yamaha, man. That is where you have to be patient.
Hey,
You
that's
had to
the
be
answer.
patient, otherwise you're going to the back, man. I mean, come on.
Hey, prime Yamaha racing. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's such a mess," like all this, but man, we had some clean races up there. Like,
Yeah, and like when I look at like X30 now, I just don't know if the one-piece pipe was the right move. I just don't know. I mean, it seemed like the racing was just so much different when they still had the flex. But I mean, you guys have been around the paddock a lot more than I have since the introduction of the one-piece pipe. But it seems like the driving's gotten dirtier and it's more spread out ever since that. So like, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I think that's a fair point, really. It's actually one that I hadn't thought of that much, but I guess that it would change a bit in the way that they race. I think another thing that the elephant in the room is that people's, at least on the X30 side, the engine discrepancy. Since when we were coming up, kind of like 2015, 2016, 2017, it was kind of switch over from Leopard to X30, and
Man, the Leopard was a great engine, man. I love that thing.
Side note, I hope Eric Jones is not watching this, but the Leopard was an amazing engine. X30 is also a really good engine too. I don't want to say it's not. It's
fantastic.
It's an awesome engine to drive, awesome engine to whatnot. But some days I still miss the Leopards. But before we get too off topic on the Leopard discussion, I mean, I do think that early in the days of X30, you didn't have as much engine variance as I feel like you have now. And that's not to say anything about people like cheating this or that, but objectively, you see more power variance. You hear more about it in the paddock. You see more mile per hour difference when you look at the data. And I think to your point, Alex, like you take away the flex pipe, go back to go to the one piece, and it changes the power band some. It changes a little bit of where you could afford to kind of be more aggressive with less or more forgiveness on exit. I think you see the results of that from a racecraft standpoint. So that's a good point. And I mean, Cyril, I know that you've seen both sides of the X30 racing as well. You have any thoughts on that one?
I think it goes beyond the X30. I mean, I think we're seeing quite a bit of power variance in most classes, more than I have seen in the past. I don't know what it is. I mean, I know there's just maybe teams have more of a luxury of getting a batch of engines and then just one's better than the other, and that's very much the case, and that's what we see. But I think more than ever, like even in the K was brought in to become like this economically friendly package, and as of recently, I mean, from the teams and parents and drivers I've spoken to, it's gotten to the level of expensiveness.
Bunch of money.
Well,
yeah, just
can
to
I
find
add
that.
something real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
So I remember back when the KA motor came out, and this is a little bit different than what I was thinking, but I remember if you pre-registered for the season, they would give you a motor. And but the thing is you were allowed to, send it to Daniel Wilcher, somebody else to, go build it for you. But, you wonder if a step in the right direction would be, if you pre-register for the year, you're given a motor and it's sealed. I've thought about that, but like, obviously there's going to be the discrepancy of like, oh, well, somebody might get a better motor than this person. But like, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're definitely right on the, the kind of the path that X30 has gone down and, the power difference in data and stuff like that. So that's kind of a solution I've thought about, but, I feel like there's discrepancy anywhere you can go.
Yeah. I was going to say, Alex, when you won the KA championship that first year, how much effort did you guys put into like testing the engines and having multiple engines and kind of getting it rebuilt and everything?
Honestly, not very much. We got our motor. I got very lucky. Daniel Welcher built me a great engine for that year, and I think that was kind of the engine builders were all kind of figure out like what the hell do we do with this thing? How do we make this thing faster? But I got very lucky with mine. But that season, I did really well more because of the MR29 Merlin chassis. I mean, the only thing we changed, the only thing we changed on that go-kart the entire year was the sprocket. I mean, we never changed it, and I mean, you take that go-kart to like a road course like Supernats or like Autobahn, it's second to none. I mean, it's going to destroy everybody, and I think that was more related to the success I had that year rather than the motor. I had a really good motor that year, and I was very fortunate. But definitely it was the MR29 Merlin chassis that was just it was unstoppable. And I was kind of getting too big for it because it's the junior chassis. So
yeah, you can only run it till you're Brandon. Well, unless you're Brandon Lemke and senior, you can only run it for so many years. But that's
exactly.
That's 29. I mean, you had a Supernats in Vegas in 2015 where you were P1 on Super Sunday. That was, I think,
oh man,
street circuits, Newcastle, Road America, low grip. It was quite all right, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was great. And I think actually in that Supernats race, I started third in that race. Because I remember starting behind Gianluca Pedikov. And I forgot who was starting second, but yeah, I remember starting third for that race. But I mean, that chassis was so fast at Supernats, man. It was like the second I got off of that and went to other chassis, like I just wasn't the same, man. Like that's how good that chassis was on the road course. So
yeah, absolutely. Alex, Kaleb, you guys have any questions?
I'll start. I mean, as a guy who's been through or still going through the ranks, I'd say from karting to cars. I mean, for drivers watching who want advice on what it takes to get to the next step, I mean, what can you kind of say to them?
well, for me, I wasn't really sure. I kind of always pictured myself coming out of go-kart, kind of going towards like the road to Indy stuff. But me and my family, we just couldn't afford to get into something like that. So we just kind of kept racing go-karts, had fun with it, and we said, whatever happens, happens. We meet the right people. It is what it is. But but the reason I got into Spec MX5 and the Spec Miata was from the Spec MX5 shootout back in either 2020 or 2021. I think it was 2021. And that introduced me to the whole sports car racing, the whole sports car side of racing, I guess. And I built a very solid relationship with the team I run for, Advanced Autosports, and they helped me a lot kind of get into the program, and we had a lot of fun with it, so we continued to do it. But it was a lot easier for me to step into like a Spec Miata or like a sports car rather than like a USF 2000, for example. And so I guess for drivers that are aspiring to go into any sort of car racing, like I wouldn't count out Spec Miata or any sort of sports car racing. I wouldn't only focus on the road to Indy or any of the open wheel stuff. I would consider all your options. So
yeah, for sure. If anybody's watching, wondering why we're all chuckling all of a sudden, so you've probably seen the Instagram already. We're gonna have Tim Koyen on later on in the show, but he's just said that Bertagnoli looks like Harry Potter. So that's pretty good. But
that actually leads me to
dude, my vision's gotten bad, man. I need these.
That actually leads me to my next question here, Alex. But what's it kind of been like, hanging around with the USPKS guys this year? It seems like you guys always have a lot of fun whenever you guys are, after hours hanging around the paddock, playing games and whatnot, finding stuff to pass time with.
Oh man, it's been great. I mean, I've known Blake, Adam. I mean, all these guys that are Preston, Brian. I mean, all these guys. I've known them for years. So coming onto the team this year, it was a very easy transition. And yeah, I mean, obviously
Oh no, I think we lost him.
5 seconds. 5
I don't
seconds.
know.
3,
Trust the process.
2,
Oh, sorry, I think I
1.
cut out there.
There
There
we
he goes.
go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, what I was saying though is, everybody kind of gets bored at some point in the weekend, so we try to find stupid shit to do. So we ended up taking a go-kart tire and a bunch of street signs and trying to see if we could like kind of bull the tire under all the signs and get it all the way across the paddock. So yeah, so I mean, it's been great. I love working with those guys. It's been a fantastic experience. I've learned a lot being on the other side of I would say the driver aspect of racing. And yeah, I hope to do it more next year if I have the time. And so yeah, it's been great.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna ask one thing. We talked in Dowsman when you were on the scale line. I was like, you should spice things up a little bit and start some fights. I know Tim probably wouldn't be too happy to hear that. But as you look around and you watch these races, as you talk to these parents and whatnot, how difficult is it to kind of like be on that fully professional side versus kind of thinking back to kind of like how you would have thought of things when you were a driver?
I don't know. I think being a driver, especially if you're running with, or if you're just with your parents, you have a lot of friends around. All you kind of do is mess around the whole time you're there, and go on track, have a good time. But yeah, well, I guess when you're in a position of power, you have to take things a little bit more seriously, right? So yeah, it's been great, and sometimes it's hard to kind of like stay focused and stay serious, especially when you work with a bunch of people But we got a job to do. We want to make sure that everyone's getting the best experience possible when they're out there, especially we recognize the amount of money it takes to race at this national level of competition. So we do the best that we can. And when it comes down to working and, doing our jobs, we take it seriously when, the races are going on. So, yeah, so there's a line between having fun and obviously, taking your job seriously. So
You're just like us, man. You're just like us, dude.
what it's all about, man. You got to have
yeah,
fun.
yeah. We like. I mean, the boys know we have fun whenever. Obviously the lights are or the show ends and we have a good time. But I think you said it best. We recognize everything that parents do or subscribe to our stuff and pay the $9.99 a month to watch all the racing action. So we get it. But you guys are, man, like it's kind of crazy to think, but like conversations like this make us realize like, man, like they just like us, dude. They're just like us.
Yeah, and obviously, we're not perfect. We make mistakes just like everybody else. We're human, but I think we do as best as we can, and I think this year has been pretty solid. I think there's things we can improve on and things we've done really well. So we'll take what we've done this year, and I'm not going to be at the race next weekend, but yeah, I think it's been great. It's been a great learning experience, and I'm hoping I get to do it more.
Absolutely. I've got one more question for actually both Alex this year, because the three of us all worked with Jason Birdsell at some point in our karting careers.
Hell
And I figured in the spirit of conversation, we've had a lot of serious talks. I want to hear from both of you what your most memorable Jaybird moment was.
Oh man, you go first.
Oh man, that's almost. Oh yeah, Emory, you go first.
Oh man, dude, there's so many. This is
Yeah.
hard for me, man. All the inside jokes and everything,
Oh.
man. But I remember when it was Ocala. I don't remember what year it was. I think it was 2017, and the whole Franklin crew went out to dinner, and it was my dad's birthday, like the week before. So he told everybody at the restaurant that it was like my dad's birthday today. So so he's getting everyone riled up, and then the music starts playing in the restaurant, and they come out and they pie my dad in the face with like I don't even know what it was, but he instigated the entire thing. It was a hilarious night, and man, you put me on the spot there. I have so many Birdsell stories, but that was the first one I could think of is when he pulled that prank on my dad. That was the best. No.
Yeah, I think for me, like you said, it's on the spot, so I'm trying to dial it back in terms of, well, not even dial it back, but like just turn down the clock a little bit in terms of just my memory, but it was actually my first race ever. So my first race ever, I worked with Birdsell. It was in Jacksonville. I forgot what series it was, but it was in Jacksonville. So you can imagine, uh, 2017, what
Shout
series
out
went there.
130 Main.
Yeah, 103rd
10
Street.
103 too.
103rd Street.
I'm actually dyslexic, bro. I'm
But
actually dyslexic.
if you ever driven Jacksonville, it is like the closest thing you'll get to Monza in terms of there is no braking, flat out, doesn't matter what class you're in except for like a shifter. And I forgot exactly what he told my dad, but he came back. He told me what he told my dad. I bended off the racetrack in qualifying, like just straight, like back straight, T1, quick banked. I just off the racetrack, first race ever. And I forgot what he told my dad, but it was something really funny. And it's gonna come back to me at some point in the show, and I'm gonna like say it in the most obscure time.
Oh,
But
trust me, I'm gonna think of 10
Yeah.
better stories than what I
but
told you.
I know he roasted me pretty good, and it was really funny in the moment. But we ended up like winning later on anyway, so it didn't matter. But Jason, I think I worked with Jason for my first 2 years in karting because I won the grands with him my following year in junior at CKNA, and that was like a full circle moment for me because that was like my first win in karting or one of my first big wins in karting, and he was like incredibly happy for me. But like the ride to get there was pretty fun as well.
Yeah, we always used to have our inside joke together. Is we always like gave each other shit in like English accents, and the best piece of advice he gave me was drive better, mate. That's
Oh,
best piece of advice. I gotta give a shout out to Jason, man.
Absolutely.
He if it weren't for
100%.
him, I don't know if I'd have near the amount of success that I had in the go-kart, man. I mean,
He's a wizard.
he was the best coach I had. He was excellent, and
Yeah.
most importantly, we had and we still today have a great relationship. And I love the guy to death. So
Yeah.
He is a magician, like just in general. Coach on the wrenches, tuning the motor. Like there's not many better people out there than Jason. The fact that he's still doing it and still kicking butt, and manages to always have a smile on his face. I mean, he's pretty funny, dude. And if you've never spoken to Jason, please
got to.
do.
Oh yeah.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
Oh man. I'm gonna say there's two main stories. One's like off track, one's on track. The first one, kind of to Alex's point, there was a time in like 2017, a span where both Jays, basically Jamie and Jason, spoke for like hours on end in a Sons of Anarchy accent, like and just like would not stop, and it's just like full like before we had all the hog riders, they would like be like, oh man, I can't even do the accent. I'm horrible at accents, but it was the accent side of that was amazing, and then also.
Dude, he's good at them, like all of them, dude.
He can pull off like 5 or 6 at a time. It's insane.
Yeah.
And then the second one is down in Daytona one year in Yamaha. It was my first time like ever being quickest in happy hour. I go out for qualifying. I like screw it up, basically, completely screw up the session. I come in to the pits. Does not say a word to me like when my dad's around or my mom's around for like 15-20 minutes. And then we back at that time we had like a toy hauler trailer, so I go back in. Jason comes in about 5 minutes later, and like he had never really cursed like that much to me. It's a 5-minute story that was probably the worst language known to man. But then after,
dude, I was ahead of all the kids in my high school, like humor wise, because of that man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
I feel like at least 5 years of development were sped up for me because I was around Jason Birdsell. But no, I mean, Jason on a serious level though was awesome as a coach, and again, like you guys, like I mean, we still have a really good relationship to this day, and I don't know, man. I had to end off with this because I know. I'm sorry, Kaleb. If you have any Jason Birdsell. Any Jason Birdsell stories you want?
He's been at TSRS a couple of times, but I haven't like actually gotten the chance to go up and like speak to him and like actually like sit down and have a conversation because he's always running around the tent and I've been running around doing our thing too. So I can't. But I see Tim's pretty busy in the private chat as well.
Oh man, Tim said I can't believe I'm getting green room by Jason Birdsell stories.
Might as well just bring him in early, dude.
Yeah, you know what? We're gonna bring Tim on now. He's gonna be. I don't know if he's listening to the segment at the moment, but Tim, we're gonna have Tim on after this break. Actually, you know what?
Oh, I think Tim lagged out.
Ah, you lagged out right
No.
before this happened, man.
No,
No.
let's give it
Well,
a second because he
yeah,
just
got
typed in the chat, so that means
yeah.
let's give him a quick
So
reset here.
something important to say. So Tim, if you can hear us, you might want to reload the camera or reload the browser because we want to hear from you before we get Bert on out of here.
Oh man, I don't think he can. Can we reset it?
Uh,
Can
She
we
said he
reset
can
it on
hear
our?
us. She said I can
let
hear
me
you.
Okay, try one more time.
wait. Let's add him.
No.
It's still a blank screen.
You're there on my end.
Oh,
I think you should just turn his camera on.
I
Yeah.
see myself.
There we go.
There you go.
All right, perfect.
Welcome
right.
to technology, Tim.
Hey,
Oh man, welcome to
I've
the
been here
show.
watching the whole time. Well, not the whole time, but
Oh man, no, we've seen you. I want to hear though now. What do you have on your mind about Bert before we get him on or get him out of here and transition onto your ends?
I think he's doing a great job as a track official, and I think it's awesome to have him, and hopefully he can join us, for the whole season next year and going forward. But yeah, I think it's great to bring in people who are accomplished racers and who always, see the other side of it as officials, and he's been a great addition. Plus, he's fun to pick on, and that's all cool.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Oh man, I was gonna say, I mean, all of that's true, but I was expecting a little more when we brought you in from the chat.
I wouldn't do
expect-
that to him. I need him. We need him to come back. It's very difficult to find good track officials. When you get one, you don't want to chase them away.
Oh man, well, Alex Bertagnoli, outstanding track official, outstanding karting driver. He'll be in the SCCA runoffs, hopefully running up towards the front of the field. All of this stuff to say. Thank you for being on the show, Alex. I mean, it's been a pleasure hearing all your side of things, hearing about anywhere from the Jason Birdsell stories to the racecraft discussions to your career as a karting driver. So it's been awesome having you on, man.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. I haven't gotten to communicate with Trevor or Xander in a while, but it's been awesome to see how much this platform has grown. I think you guys have done an excellent job in making it more accessible to other people that are either getting into the sport or people that just want to keep up with it. I think you guys have done such a great job, and it's awesome to see, especially for me coming from a time where there was no live stream races, or there was, it wasn't very accessible to people outside. So, yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me, and I hope I can come back sometime.
Yeah, for sure. We'll try to get you next time on a weekend where you're actually working. But
Yeah.
but good luck with runoffs, man. And again, we'll see you on the other side. But for everyone else, and as we get Tim Koyen on here for his actual segment, we want to give him a little bit of preview before we got into the meat of his side of things. That was Alex Bertagnoli. That was the first part of our show. And we'll be back after our break to cover Tim Koyen and the United States Pro Kart Series heading into their season finales. So real quickly, Alex, I almost forgot. Before you leave, we usually give this time to plug anything and everything that you can think of. So the floor is yours. You can talk racing, you can talk social media, you can talk anything else going on in your life.
Oh, man, I don't know. I mean, I really wish I was working next weekend, man. Like, I want to see how the points play out in X30. How close are the points in X30 right now?
Was this like 270?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's what is it, Garrison to Tulio?
Yeah, it's about 270.
So it's pretty tight among the top 2 or 3.
Relatively.
Yeah.
Like you get 720 for a race win, or for like sweeping the whole weekend. Plus, I think I did the math right on that. Anyways, but yeah, no, it's a pretty tight battle. So
yeah, I'm an employee and I feel like I should know the points, but I haven't been paying much attention. But
I wrote the system and I don't remember it.
Oh man.
But yeah, man. No, I wish I was gonna be there for the final event. Obviously I'm super excited for the SCCA runoffs. I think we have a solid package in the Spec Miata, and I have a great teammate that I'm going to work with, Ethan Jacobs, in qualifying. So I'm hoping that we could put it on the front row, and I hope that I can win that. The SCCA runoffs is sort of like the SCUSA Super Nationals for me. It's like it's the big one. It's the one that everyone looks forward to at the end of the year. And Yeah, I'm super excited to race next weekend. I've been out of the seat for a couple months now, so I'm super ready.
All right. Well, can't wait to see how you do on that one. Again, would have been nice if you're at USPKS for this weekend, but what can you do? So, Alex Bertagnoli, thanks, man. And we appreciate your time once again on this show.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, bud.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And now we go to our commercial break that I teased like 5 minutes ago and did not play that out right. But we'll have a word from our sponsor. You know, I'm sure that you've heard from them before. It's shopakr.com, and we will be right back after this break with more.
Brandon, why are there all these charges for just over $200 from Acceleration Kart Racing's website?
That's because AKR gives you free shipping on orders of $200 or more within the continental US.
Okay, but I thought you were just getting a pair of gloves. That's what, 70 bucks?
But if I'm getting a new pair of gloves, I might as well get a new pair of shoes to match. And then on top of that, I'll get a neck brace because with the shipping, it's basically free.
Yeah, I do not think the math checks out on that.
Everything you need, all in one place and shipped to your door for free for orders of $200 or more. Exclusions apply. Spend responsibly. Shop AKR.com.
Now, I might not be too much of an insider, but I hear rumors that we're going to have at some point in the near future some different voices. So if you've heard Hey Brandon for the 700th time this year, just know won't be hearing it quite as much lately. But shopakr.com, powering our podcast, powering everything Kart Chaser. Again, do check them out if you haven't already. But so we get that for the next part of the show. It is time for Tim Koyen to be on the show again. USPKS entering their final round of the 11th year of the series. We've seen it grow, as Alex mentioned, from 2013 to now, really technically 12th season, 11 years. I always do the math wrong a bit on that, but 11th year of the series. You know, you get set into yet another championship finale. How would you assess this year to this point, Tim?
I think it's been an interesting year. I think it's not just been an interesting year for USPKS, but for all racing series. I think we're starting to see the economic pressures of our economy affecting the racing. We've been insulated, you know, in the sport. Our competitors tend to be a little bit more affluent than your average person. And I think that has kind of worn through a little bit now. That, and there's just so much racing. I mean, we all love racing, but there's so much of it that all of the series seem like they've taken a little bit of a hit this year in terms of entries. I think the racing has still been good. I think the programs have been good. Just the number of karts on the grid has been a little bit less than we had last year. And I think but a large part of it is the economy. And I think, you know, one of the things we had talked about previously was the schedule being reduced by a race for next year. And that's simply to help the situation. I mean, there's just too much racing and not enough money to go around. So we want to make it so everybody gets a chance to, you know, complete a full tour with the best of the best. And we're going to make it a little bit easier by cutting it back to 4 races and even throwing that drop race in there. So hopefully everybody feels like they have a competitive opportunity to win a championship going into the final stages of the season next year.
Yeah, and I mean, this is, I believe, the first time that you guys have done the no drop format with the 5-round series. You did it a good bit with the 3 round, and before that with the 4 round, if I'm not mistaken. Talk me through kind of how you felt like that format has gone this year, and also how the one final format, because, you know, we hear a lot when it comes to the economics of it, like you mentioned, and kind of limiting, whether it be limiting track time or maximizing opportunity. What was your stance on 1 final versus 2 finals, and do you think that will play a part going forward as kind of what you feel like is more economically efficient for competitors?
I don't know that I think it's economically good or bad for competitors to have 1 final or 2 finals. I think it's more reflective of the way that it works in life. You know, somebody wins on the weekend, And that's what happens. I mean, it's not just a, well, I'm going to toss Saturday because I'm going to win on Sunday, or that kind of a thing. It's professional racing doesn't work that way. NASCAR doesn't work that way. IndyCar doesn't work that way. Other forms of motorsports don't particularly work that way once they get to the top levels. And so I think that's why we look at it more like, how do you develop, the one true winner for the weekend? And I think that's the reason that we went to that format. It also allows you to have essentially more track time kind of compacted into a smaller time window. And one thing that we hear a lot from people is that, there's a small group of people that says, well, we're here to race. We want to race till it gets dark on Sunday. But then you also have a much larger group of people that says, hey, Sunday, we need to get home Sunday night. We got work, school Monday, things like that. And if we can be done by 3:00, it makes our life so much better. And those people are, important too. And there's other opportunities. If you want to race till 6:00 on Sunday night, you got other places you can do it. But for us, I think it just works out well with the format we have. I like it. I think the racers like it. Even people who told me in the beginning of the year that they weren't sure if they were going to like it have come around and said, you know what, it's really nice to be able to have this thing all wrapped up in a reasonable time. And they're still getting just as much track time. We just don't have as much on off and wasted time because we compacted into less sessions.
Yeah. And so over the years of USPKS, with upwards of 11, like I said, a 12th season, 11 years total, what's been kind of the main things that you've learned that maybe weren't quite as prevalent coming into the start of the series? Like, as you've kind of seen the series progress, how have you seen, I guess, the karting paddock around it progress, and kind of what takeaways have you had from that?
There's one very interesting thing that I think is funny, because when we conceived this series back in 2012 or whenever it was, something like that, and we had all these people involved, and at the time, I don't remember, it was Kevin Nelson or somebody said we could have a rule book that's got 10 pages in it. That's it. That's all you need. And at the time, WK had, something just short of Webster's Unabridged Dictionary as a rule book. And, it was like this, that, and it was just so complicated. And we were like, you could do this all in 10 pages. It'd be very basic, all that kind of stuff. And so here we are now, 10, 12 years later, and our rule book is 60 pages. It's just like, we never imagined that there would be so many things that would come up that would have to be covered one way or another, whether it was as a result of the driving standards or the engine rules or these different engines or insurance requirements or, all these things that we never expected this thing to balloon up into the rules and regulations that we have now. All that said, I think it's a great tool, and it, everybody knows what the story is before they get to the track. So it's important. But if I'd say there's one thing that's probably much different than I think we all imagined it when we came up with the idea of starting this series, is probably the rules. They're just way more complicated than we thought they needed to be. We were a little naive, I think, at the time.
Yeah, and I mean, again, talk to me about that process of coming up with the series, forming the series. Like, what went into that, and kind of, I guess, what do you guys modeled off of, and kind of how did that evolve from the time that you guys conceived of it to the time that you guys showed up in Mooresville in April of 2013?
Well, there was about 10 people roughly that were kind of involved in planning it. And, Coates was the ringleader, I would say. And at the time, Mark's nephew, Colton Ramsey, which some of you guys know, and my son, TJ, were both actively racing. And they were racing a lot. We were racing WK races. We were racing regional races. We were racing SCUSA, Pro Tour races, Vegas, all those races. And we'd always come home and we would say, this sucked about this weekend, or this didn't make any sense. Why did they do that? And eventually we somehow convinced ourselves to think that we could do it better. And so some of us got to talking, and I don't remember who all was involved at the time. I know both Mark Jr. and Senior Dismore were there. We had a kickoff meeting. Eric Jones teleported in on Skype or whatever the precursor to Skype was 10, 12 years ago. Rick Folks was there. There was a couple other people there. Jamie Saraki was there. So there was a number of people that were at this meeting, and I actually took a picture. So I'm the one who's not in the picture because I took the picture of all the people that were in this meeting. But it was a meeting in Springfield, Illinois, where we all sat around and said, hey, here's our idea. We think this. We'd kind of all individually talked about it, and we really got everybody to support it. You know, all these, like Comet and Franklin were like, yeah, if you do it, we'll bring customers. We'll do this. We'll do that. And Eric Jones said, if you do it, we'll provide this stuff and we'll do that stuff. And really, that's kind of how it all got put together with. Basically, it was just a real simple goal. At the time, WK was the only series racing here, the only big series. There were regionals, but there was no SCUSA didn't go east of the Mississippi, so there was none of that. And so we started it, and it went okay for the first few years. But then we ended up I think we just had too many races. We had 5 races. They were 2-day, Saturday, Sunday. Yamaha was one of the classes, which was big at the time, but it was kind of on its way out. And, things just got to the point where it was like we weren't really growing. We were just kind of stagnant. In fact, we started to shrink, and we were like, you know what? We need to make a change. And the change was we cut out some of the races. We just said instead of doing 5, we're going to do 3, and they're going to be 3 bigger races. And the thing just came back with a vengeance the next year, and then really just kind of grew from there again. I think we got a little bit too big too soon was really what happened there. But the rest I think has kind of been history on it. And but we've always maintained kind of the same mantra where we talk to everybody, we listen to everybody, we want people's suggestions, we want people's ideas, we want people to tell us what we should do differently, we want people to tell us what they like. And that's some of what led to the schedule being changed for next year, is just talking to people and people saying that we love it, 5's too many, we just can't do it, life gets in the way, so
yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, Tim, you talked about, I guess, your past with TJ and racing, other stuff. You guys have been pretty busy this year as well. TJ, just saw you guys out at Stars as you guys finished up that championship. What's that been like for you guys this year? Obviously, still being a dad and still being a mechanic there for TJ whenever he decides to race.
That's been fun. That's something I miss doing. That's what I was doing when USPKS started. I didn't actually work for the series when it started. I didn't want to. They asked me to be the race director. Of all the miserable jobs you could get, they asked me at this meeting to be the race director, and I said, no, this series is going to be awesome. I want to race it. So we did for a couple of years. But anyway, racing with TJ has been great. The results were awful, but it's because we're, doing kinds of crazy things and stuff. But, it's been a good time to be at the track and to be back with him. He's 33 years old, and he will not race Masters. He refuses to because I'd rather quit than race Masters. So, so he gets his butt kicked in senior, which is fine, but we have fun doing it. And his son, my grandson, is 4. And, I'm kind of working around to that. We'll see where that goes. TJ is not a huge, push him into this or that because, he doesn't want to rush that. But it's been a good time, and I'm looking forward to, having more racing in the family in the future.
Yeah, and also, I mean, what's it been like seeing, I guess being back in the customer seat rather than being in one of the guys providing a service to other people?
Yeah, that's been kind of an interesting experience because, when I get feedback, so this year we raced, we attended 2 Stars races. We were supposed to do 3, but things fell through, so we ended up only doing 2 of them. And we hear a lot of people talking about Stars, because Stars has done a lot of growth. They've done some interesting things. And for really what I'd call a big regional race, they put on a pretty nice race. And I know Christian a bit, I know Joe Janowski a bit, and so going to their races has been interesting, because there are definitely things that I walk away on the weekend going, that is really cool, that's a really good idea. And there's also things that make me cringe. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they do it differently than I would do it. But, there are certain things that I see that make me go, yeah, we're not doing that. I would never do it that way. I don't understand why they do it that way, but that's their prerogative to do it that way. But it's certainly been a learning experience, and good to see that other side of it. And it's not new to me, because honestly, we've raced the Supernats for years. We've raced on and off. We raced other stuff. And so those were always things. I went to the SCUSA race in Orlando this year for no other reason than to see how they were doing things. It's important to see what your other competitors are doing, and what they're doing, people like and what they don't like. I can't just rely on people coming up to me and saying, oh my God, you wouldn't believe that SCUSA did this, it was awful, or this was great, or whatever. Because unless you see the context things happen in, you don't get the big picture.
Yeah.
So
I get that aspect of it, but one of the things that I think that SCUSA and Stars do pretty well is the implementing the video side of things into their race directing. What do you think is holding you guys back from implementing video behind y'all's I guess penalty calling and stuff like that? Because you guys are one of the only series right now, the only big series without that video system in place.
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion, and it's this comes up frequently. We talk about it a lot, and there's everything always seems better until you do it. Now, if I get on the inside and I talk to some of the people who work in these other series that use this stuff, it's kind of like, well, it doesn't work a lot of times. We spend a lot of time trying to get it to work, maintaining it. There's a huge cost in it, an unbelievable cost in maintaining it. And in the end, is the officiating better? So if we have five race directors on track, we have, flagman, we have the race director, 5 assistants, we got a lot of eyes on the track. No one gets everything, not even the cameras. So if you were to pool all the people that raced all of these series, and you said to them, which series has ranked the officiating in best to worst, I bet it would be an even split in thirds. I don't think anybody would say, oh, theirs is way better because they have cameras, or yours is way worse because you don't have cameras. So, that's kind of where it's at. I don't want the series to turn into a technical, I don't want it to be an AI run series. We'll all just go race computers then. It needs to have the human element. And the human element is the drivers, but it's also the officials.
Is it fair to say, because it's a good point I think you make in terms of, listen, like, you guys have a lot of personnel. You're not going to catch everything naturally. Is it fair to say, like, maybe could you ever see you guys going a 50-50 split? Like, okay, we got, a bunch of, corner workers out there. We have our officials. Here's the corners that we don't have eyes on. Maybe put a camera there, do you think? Or do you guys ever see yourself going that direction?
I mean, you never say never, because there's always opportunity, to make something better. The only way we would do anything really is if it makes sense. And, the criteria for making sense is it more economical for us to run the race? And does it make the racing better? Because if it doesn't make the racing better, then it's stupid, whatever it is. So it's kind of like, is that going to help the racing to have a camera there? Like, for instance, I think it's in Star's situation. They have a lot of cameras. Actually, both Stars and SCUSA have a lot of cameras, but their people on track, I think, are primarily there just kind of as marshals to timestamp things and say, hey, go look at this corner. Let's say, look at turn 11 at, 2:30 p.m. and then somebody inside the booth goes back and reviews the video and kind of decides whether there's a penalty there, unless it's like something egregious. And I think that's fine, but having participated in some of these races and having seen some penalties that would have been called if I were on track or if our officials were on track, and not seeing any penalties called from these other organizations, it makes me go, yeah, this system isn't perfect. So unless somebody actually sees something happen, there isn't a penalty anyway. You can't just sit there and stare at 20 camera screens. You'd have to have 20 people doing it and, calling everything they see. So unless something is seen, the cameras really are a backup to go vet the penalty or go confirm it or deny it. It's not so much did something happen? That kind of that's the way they're used. Is there a way they could be used better in the future? I don't know. It's crazy if you have to have 20 people sitting there looking at cameras. That doesn't seem like fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that aspect of, having it's also not economically smart to have 20 people there, staring at just a bunch of TV monitors, 'cause it just doesn't work that way. But you guys, I really think I'm a huge fan of your guys' TV video board with all the live updates on the penalties. But I can't fail to mention at MCC, I think there was I wouldn't say a missed call, but there was a no penalty for the incident in between Carr and Garrison, and then I think there was another incident that are pretty big incidents that occurred throughout that race. And so I guess, do you believe that adding video to that wouldn't change the outcome of I guess no calls like the ones you guys had the past weekend at MCC?
The only way that it would change that is so first of all, I don't hardly watch any racing. I'm too busy making sure other things don't break or get fixed or work or whatever. So I don't even know exactly what you're talking about as far as the incidents. But the only way that I think that, in your interpretation of a missed call would be is if somebody said, hey, what happened back there? And then there was a video that we could go back and look at it and say, oh, this is what happened, or what looks like it happened from the camera, because sometimes that isn't actually what happened. It's like the old brake check without the brakes. You lift, somebody runs into the back of you, and then you take off. Well, what happened? Did you get run into from behind, or did you lift on the guy in front of you? That kind of thing. So the camera doesn't always tell the whole truth, but it can definitely be beneficial in situations like that. And again, like I said, if there was somebody that noticed something, like in the case of a wreck, when there's obviously something going on, and then you have a video of it and you can go back and look at it. Yeah, I think something like that would be beneficial. But it all comes at a cost, and it's it's not a cost to the racers as well. When we get done with a race, you want to know that you won the race, not like, oh, let's sit back now for half an hour and go through the penalties and figure out who got what. I mean, that's bullshit.
Right. Yeah, no, yeah, and I completely agree with that aspect of it too, because you can't pass that 30-minute protest period or go back into a race and give a penalty after the race. I've never been a fan of, and I don't think any series really has it where you go back and give somebody a penalty after the race has been completed. So I
agree.
Quota here from that aspect and that side of things.
Well, now here's an interesting. So I don't know if I should really air this one because this actually personally happened. But what the hell? We're gonna do it anyway. So at the last Stars race, TJ got a penalty. I can't remember him ever getting a penalty, honestly. But okay, he got a penalty for avoidable contact in turn the hairpin at Trackhouse. I don't know what they call that. Depends what layout you're running, but the hairpin. The tight left-hander. He got a penalty for that in a certain race, and they told him at the scale line that he was under investigation. Okay, so the race was over. They don't tell you have a penalty right away. They just say it's under investigation. So he says, okay, go back to the pit area. He tells me this, and I'm like, for what? Because he got wrecked in that corner. He got driven off. They dive bombed him, drove him off the outside. You've all been there. You know how it works. Whatever. He went through the dirt, came back on. Happens. And so he's like, they told me it's under investigation. I said, okay. And he goes, well, it would have been on me or against me rather than on me. So a couple minutes, whatever, 5 minutes goes by. They post on Discord that he's got a penalty for avoidable contact. So I'm like, well, this is interesting. And he's like, I'm not even going to worry about it. It was stupid. It's like 23rd place or something, And I'm like, yeah, but I'm curious how the process works. So I asked Christian Marsh, how do you find out what this is? He says, go down and see the driver's steward, go down there, talk to the driver's steward. And they're like, what we can tell you is that it happened at a certain time, like, 3:30 p.m. And it was in turn 8 or 9 or whatever. It was in turn 11, let's just say. Yeah, turn 8. And I'm like, okay, well, who was it with? So I know, so we can go look at the video and go, what happened? They're like, we don't know. Well, how do you not know? I'm like, well, the system doesn't have it in there. We don't know. Well, if you have a video of it, why don't you know? Well, we had to review the video to give you the penalty, but you don't know who it was with. No. Okay, so that's a case of the system is broken. Something is not right in that system. And I'm sure, and I know TJ talked to Christian about it the next day, and he said, yeah, something got dropped there, and they'll fix that, and whatever. I'm sure they will. But it's a case of imperfect system. I mean, how can you issue a penalty based on a video when you have the video that you don't know who you ran into? You know what I mean? And so, they said, well, it was TJ posted the video on Instagram or whatever, and he said, I don't understand how I got a penalty. Alec Coates said it was a different lap, and TJ's like, no, this is the whole video. I mean, there was no other contact anywhere else. So I don't know, there was a mistake made somewhere. It's not worth grinding an axe for 20th position, but it's just, I'm sure this isn't the first time it's happened, so I'm sure there's just processes that, we make mistakes when we make calls on track. Luckily we have a video review. People can bring their camera up and in some cases prove that it wasn't them or it was somebody else. And hopefully we get that right most of the time. I would say that of the people who protest a penalty, a large number of them get overturned because they don't protest them if they were wrong. If the penalty was a good penalty, they're not going to come up and argue it, because the video is going to show them running into somebody. So, I don't know. To your point, I do think there are times when a camera would help, but it does come at a certain cost, and you question sometimes whether it's worth it.
Yeah, and I guess my next question here, Tim, before I open the floor back up to Emory and Alex, you guys were also one of the only series to not change your format this year. There's also a little bit of change for benefiting the pro classes just a little bit more, and I saw you guys did with the winner circle as well. Is there any thought of you guys perhaps changing the format a little bit next year for the pro category, or thinking about staying the same?
I don't think it's going to change. I honestly don't. I never really saw the benefit in the pro show concept. The way it was pitched to people was that the mechanics were going to be able to work on team karts and all this and go race at the end of the day. The practical aspect of it was everybody hated it that way. And everybody said, we don't get enough track time. And it just didn't make a lot of sense. All things that I said, people aren't going to like this because it's way less laps. They're paying more money for less racing. For what? So that they get their own featured segment? I just don't see it. Now, maybe it works in certain series. I don't see it working in ours. We've always tried to feature like the X30 Pro class. And we've had them at the end of the order every time. So everybody has an opportunity. If they want to come down on line defense and watch it, they certainly can. We gave them a little more intro time for that kind of thing. But honestly, I don't feel like I'd call the pro show a success. Now, you guys are probably going to argue with me about that, but I don't know that it has it made it better. Has it made anything better?
The way I look at it and the way that I think, and obviously we could disagree on this, and and I could have a different, aspect or different view about the pro show format. I think it's really, added something different to the sport, something that we haven't seen in quite some time, and added something different to it as well, and I think Stars and Scoos have done a great job about that. I think you guys have also done a great job of keeping the traditional format of it as well. But I like the whole winner circle thing. I think was super cool that Scusa implemented, and the stuff that Stars did as well was I think cool as well. I know Emory has a point to add here as well.
And they also, to be fair to Tim as well, USPKS also added to their prize structure this year.
Yeah, as well.
And if you look at the cash payouts for the pro classes, at least like when they meet the entry requirement over the years, has been consistently growing since, I believe, I don't know, Tim, my memory isn't that good for races I didn't do, but it's been growing since, I believe, 2014, 2015. So I think the format's one side of things, and we could have an argument for hours, but I do think that there's similar like reward concepts that have been in play. And Tim, I mean, you could attest to this even more.
Well, I mean, as far as people getting paid to race, it's an interesting paradox because the biggest classes, nobody gets paid. KA is arguably some of the best racing, some of the biggest classes for sure. They don't get paid. And honestly, the X30s want to be paid. Some of them, a lot of them don't care. But some of them do want to be paid. And I think that's okay to have that as a carrot out there for people. Well, we went through at the beginning of the year and we said, here's what we're going to pay. And we offered to pay shifters and we offered to pay X30 X amount. It was the biggest purse that was being offered for a weekend. So we went through, we looked at everybody else and we said, okay, this is going to be the most anybody's offering. The shifters didn't show up. They showed up for they didn't even show up for the first race hardly. And it was disappointing, but at the same time, it was like, look, if you go around and you go there's, I don't know, just throw a number. There's 2,000 people racing KA Senior in the USA at any given time, maybe, that have these motors. There's probably a fraction of that are actively have shifter motors and that are racing. So it's just, there's not enough of them to go around. So I don't think that it's a problem that you have shifter pro shows at SCUSA or at Stars or at any other series. I just don't think there's enough of them that are willing to commit or able to commit in a lot of cases, because a lot of these guys are adults. They got jobs, they got lives, and they just can't make it to all the races. So I think that's okay. And I don't have a problem with that. So I don't feel bad. I mean, I look at our entries and I go, yeah, but that's without any shifters. It's without any OKNs, which is a whole nother subject. And, I'm happy with it.
Yeah. And I mean, Tim, we've seen your class evolution over the years. I mean, you mentioned at the start of the show, we started with Leopard, we started with Yamaha. We went to the K platform. We dabbled in it with shifter. Are you at a point now where you're kind of at a satisfactory point with the classes you offer and the schedule you offer? Or is there different classes, different engine packages, or any sort of kind of changes you're going to think about making in the next couple of years as it pertains to the makeup and the composition of your series?
So for next year, 2025, the classes are all going to be the same as what we have right now. As far as I know, as far as I've talked to Mark Coates at length about it, I mean, we're pretty solid, I think, is where we're at. We like the class makeup. You never say never. And sometimes, you have to look at things like OKN and go, is this thing gaining momentum or not? Well, right now it's not, but it might. It doesn't mean it's never going to. So you keep your eyes peeled on things like that. There's a lot of discussion about the X30. What's happening with the X30? Miami has a new 125cc single speed engine that just got released this year. So that engine will probably be in our future, but it's not going to be in our future for next year. I can tell you that. No one's ready to produce it in numbers that are required to be able to have a program to support a series like USPKS. And so the X30 is a good solid engine. The thing has been around forever. Anybody who bought an X30, should have got their money's worth out of it by now. And but it's going to be around for at least another year, I'm sure of it. And beyond that, I could see, if they get the other one fleshed out and ready to go, maybe that one comes in at a certain level in 26 or 27. But we got to give an opportunity to work the X30s out of the system, and maybe Junior hangs on a little bit longer. I don't think Miami's ready to make an official position on this whole thing yet, but I think for the time being, the classes are going to stay the same for at least another year, and we can only commit to that far right now.
And so along the lines of changes, I mean, next year, you're going to Daytona, you're going to Road America, you guys haven't announced the other 2 locations unless I'm mistaken, but I think there's generally a pool of tracks that you would expect one to go with. But as you look to 2025 and the next year or so, what are we expecting to change from USPKS? Obviously, a lot will likely stay the same, but what sort of differences would someone that maybe isn't as in tune to the sport and isn't as close to it as the 4 of us, what might they see next year that they might not expect from your series?
Well, I think one of the things that has become very apparent in talking to racers, not necessarily team managers, but racers, they want variety. The team managers will say, we want to go set up at MCC and be there for a month and a half and run all of our races there. And then we want to move over to Trackhouse because it's the most economical way. But the racers say, we don't want to race at MCC 3 weeks in a row or Trackhouse 3 weeks in a row or wherever. And they want to see more variety in the schedule. And that's kind of where now the Daytona thing we've been working on for years, trying to get in there. Daytona finally committed. We've been trying to get them to commit to making improvements to the facility. And at the same time, let us come and put a race on there. They were able to commit to repaving the track this year. It's already done. And we're really looking forward to getting our chance at it, which will be in March next year. And if things go well, I think they're willing to do more stuff there. And we'd be willing to do more stuff there. I think that track is in a great location for the time of year it's at. It's in an amazing backdrop. I mean, I'm 100% sure you guys have all been inside Daytona Speedway at one time or another. But if you've never raced on the kart track, it is so cool to be racing there. And then you'll have cars by on the outside because they're doing some track day or something, or the petty school or whatever. But the backdrop of the Daytona Speedway is just it's an amazing place. And March is a great time to be there. The weather in Daytona is great. It's like being on spring break, As far as Road America, Road America is another one. Just one of the most historic tracks in the country. Everybody who goes to Road America loves Road America. The biggest bitch is the pit area is 200 yards from the track. So it's a little bit of a push for some people. I get it. I'm sorry. They won't move it. Can't do it. But Road America is just a great facility. And it's a little bit further east than some people like to go, or northeast, I should say. But it's worth going there again. It's a great facility to go to. And then the others, we're not going to announce them until probably going to be a couple weeks at least. I think one thing that we're going to see in the future, though, is variety. And I talked about this, I think, Emory, you mentioned in the email, the EKN interview I did early this year about how the cost of these kart tracks has now exceeded the cost of renting big speedways or the karting facilities at the speedways. And that is still true. Not to say that we're abandoning kart tracks, because it's definitely not happening. That's still going to be the bread and butter of it. But, I think variety is, you guys, I'm sure, saw the piece recently that Rob Howden did or David Cole did talking about all the brand new tracks. Oh, my God. Is this like a renaissance period to be living in right now in go-karting? Have you seen? There's 10 tracks in Texas. Crazy. There's all these new tracks all over the country. And it's, the next 5 years, karting is going to be amazing. We're going to be able to go to so many places, do so many cool tracks, and you can't limit yourself to status quo. I mean, there's going to be variety, definitely, and it's going to be just us. Other series will do it too, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to mention that article, actually, the next question I asked. I mean, you mentioned the kind of permanent facilities, or I guess the permanent, like, multi-purpose racing facility is probably the better term for it, as kind of being one trend that you notice in racetracks. And outside of that, outside of the new tracks, like, do you see USPKS from a geographical standpoint kind of changing the footprint? You guys have expanded into Texas. You've kept the Midwest dominant. You've been to North Carolina for pretty much every year. I mean, is there any next step geographically, or is it more kind of staying along those same footprints?
I think, I don't know, opportunities present themselves sometimes, but honestly, I don't see us right now going any further west. I mean, the heart of our customers are still in the Midwest and in the East. And we do these geographical, like pin charts that show where everybody comes from. So we know like the hometown of all of our racers at every race, how many they went, all that kind of stuff. And so we can see these clusters of where people consider their home, and people generally, I'd say 8 hours drive is a pretty comfortable range. If you put too many races that are 2 days drive for them, it becomes a little bit more of a stretch. But there's also, we've done races in Texas 2 years in a row. We did speed sports, and we have a huge number of entries from Texas. And so, it makes a difference when you go to these other states. You do pick up more customers who are willing to travel with you. So it's important to be, open-minded about, traveling a little bit. You don't have to do it every year. Road America is one, maybe you don't do it every year. Maybe you do it every other year or something like that, or every 3 years. As these other tracks come online, there's going to be a lot of clamoring to get in there. And, some of these look like they're going to be pretty cool. Some of them will be like a good regional track, but some of them are definitely going to be able to do big time racing on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one more kind of serious question before we kind of wrap things up here. We were talking with Bertagnoli a little bit before. I think it might have been a little bit before you came in the green room about the pushback system and kind of about how that's been effective. And at this point, I think USPKS was one of the first adopters when it came in.
Camera freeze again, Emory?
Yeah, it's doing it a lot, Tim, unfortunately. I'm not sure what's up with that, but on the side, there we go.
Am I back?
Yep, you're back now.
There you go.
All right, sorry.
Yeah, but as I was saying, USPKS was one of the first to adopt the pushback system in 2017. We've seen a lot of karting happen since then, a lot of pushback penalties. How would you assess the system to this point, and is it something that you're planning on keeping in going forward?
I'm not going to say too much other than I think it's something that needs to be looked at.
I see.
There it is. Okay. Quick and easy.
Yeah, we're back.
Very effective.
Sorry. I think it's something that needs to be looked at.
I got you. I think the camera froze again.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Oh, good.
Alex, Kaleb.
Do you think, like Emory said, one of the first to implement it? I mean, do you think it has accomplished what it was intended to accomplish?
I think the main thing it was supposed to do was improve the starts of the races, and compared to where the starts were 7 years ago and to where they were 4 or 5 years ago, I think it did that. It did really improve the starts a lot. However, the problem is now so many people have figured out ways to defeat it. They've got the clamps tightened down, like, they hire the Incredible Hulk to come over to be their clamp guy. And then they soak their bumpers out in the sun until they look like a, stick of Velveeta. And even if you look at like from the factory, the new bumpers, they've really narrowed the waist on the ears so that they're very flexible. and this is nothing to do with anybody doing anything. That's just putting on a factory bumper. It's gotten so now that if you don't hit the bumper actually in the middle of the bumper, it doesn't push back very well. So I think it's something that needs to be looked at and talked about. And I want to know what people think about it, what racers think about it.
Yeah. No, we had a pretty good discussion on that earlier in the show. And of course, if anyone who's just joined us hasn't listened to that first part, it is definitely worth a rewatch. I'm sure we'll have some clips going with our talk with Bertagnoli on the pushback system, steel bumpers, racing in general, and everything else. But
that'll never happen again.
Man,
the steel bumpers.
I can't lie to him. The three, me and the two Alexes, and I think Kaleb as well to some degree, all of us were in favor of it.
Yeah, the insurance companies won't ever allow that to happen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the pushback is something that that isn't insurance mandated. So, but
Yeah.
yes, TJ's first go-kart had no plastic bumper. It had the metal bars.
That was back in the good days, man.
That's why, and that's why I think, obviously insurance is going to allow that. That's why I think we should just go no contact, get rid of the issue as a whole. That's very,
I guess,
radical and very drastic and very exaggerated and drama of me, but
I guess
that's the only thing I have.
What's up, Tim?
I was just going to tell you that somebody's been talking to me about an idea of using a G-force accelerometer built into a Micron-like device on each cart that would basically trigger an event just like a car has. If you have a crash, if there's contact, then this accelerometer would trigger, and then there would be like a video capture and a penalty. And I'm just like, just stop. Okay. This is racing. Because we got to separate the wheat from the chaff here, the men from the boys, the women from the girls. We're going to get out here and we're going to race. And sometimes there's going to be a little bit of contact, and don't cry about it. It's going to be okay. You'll survive. But if you ever get to the point where we need an electronic device like Big Brother on every cart telling us that we screwed up, you screwed up, you're going to get a penalty now. I'm done. I'll be done then. That's fine.
Fair enough. Kaleb, Alex, you guys got anything else?
Nope.
Been fun chatting with you guys.
You as well, Tim.
Tim, I got one more thing to say on TJ's racing career. So he swept one weekend at USPKS some 6 years ago. That was also the only time I ever crashed with him. And I've been thinking ever since, what might get TJ back in form of it. And I was like, I need to show up to one of these track house races and just drive through the side of them, and maybe that solves the issue.
Yeah, great. I'll tell you what, they ran track house for the Stars race. They practiced it on Thursday and Friday with no turn 2, with the barriers like off the track.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is it turn 11, the last one where you come back by the wall with the barriers off there?
Yeah,
that's
turn 11.
Freaking nuts. That is nuts.
Yeah,
it's like so fast.
It changes the way you gear. It changes the way you race it. Like it's
and then they threw him back in, I guess, for Saturday. I don't know. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this differently now. But so that was pretty wild. That I don't think I've ever been there when they raced it without those barriers in there. That's unbelievably fast. But that's like 2 teeth. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a lot different than the 2018 days with TJ1. Definitely a lot different than anything I raced up until about a year ago. But
I bet.
Yeah. So, Tim, what's up? What were you gonna say?
Nope. I said it's all good.
I was tripping out then, I guess. But as always, as I almost missed with Alex at the end of the show, this is your chance. I know you probably don't have too many social medias to plug, but as it pertains to USPKS, to yourself, to anything else going on, the floor is yours to close out your side of the show.
Man, you did such a good job picking me already, that picking my brain, that I was able to empty it right there. But hey, we just want everybody to come out and have a good time, have fun. If you're in the neighborhood, man, we're gonna at Newcastle, we got like $20,000 worth of junk that we're gonna give away over the weekend. We're giving away iRacing gift cards. We're giving away some fancy Mark Coates grills. We're giving away all kinds of cool stuff. Come on and put your name in a hat, man. It's a good time. We got lots and lots of prizes.
Even for people working media and not in the race.
You can put your name on a piece of paper to get one of these fancy grills. That's how you're going to get it, because it's assembled, and we don't want you to have to put it in your luggage on a plane. So we don't want you to win it if you don't want it.
Got you. Well, I've never won a USPKS raffle prize in my 11 years of driving in the series, and it would be fitting if
no way. Come on.
I haven't. I ran one road tax race and won a raffle there, but USPKS I haven't been as fortunate.
This is bullshit. I'm gonna go check the records.
All right, man. Well, Tim, it's been a pleasure having you on. It's been a pleasure picking your brain for the last hour or so. And we'll see the final round of the USPKS series, season number 12 at Newcastle Motorsports Park. I know you were busy setting up today. I know you've got more work to do tomorrow, so we'll let you get off, but we appreciate your time, Tim.
Thank you guys so much. Have fun.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. All right, so we have one more quick commercial break, and then we'll be back to cover the last bit of intel before we get set for the final round of the United States Pro Kart Series. But first, it's another word from Shop AKR.
So you finally want to get behind the wheel, huh?
Yeah, I've been shooting for 3 years and I've never got to drive.
Well, you're going to need some more gear than just your helmet. Why don't you go to shopakr.com. They got their inventory online and they'll ship it the same day if you order before 5:30 p.m. Eastern.
They got shoes?
Yep.
Gloves?
Yep.
Rip protectors?
Got those too.
Can they make me go fast?
No.
Here at Acceleration Kart Racing, we've got everything you need to get on track. What happens next? Well, that's on you. Check us out online at shopakr.com.
Welcome back to episode number. I'm going to correct myself this time, Kaleb. Can't be getting called out. Episode number 28 of KC Grid Talk, powered by shopakr.com. Well, we've already had a lot covered tonight between our two guests, between Alex Bertagnoli and Tim Koyen. But before we finish out the show, we haven't done any predictions. It's championship weekend. Aiden and Grotto wants to know who wins X30, both the championship and the race. Alex, I'll start with you. Who's your money on?
Man, I always have to go a little bit bold here. So to win the championship, it's Garrison. But to win the race, it's Aiden and Grotto. I'm going to pick Aiden and Grotto here on the Rawson Performance Group Cosmic. I think, why not? Why not? Return to karting, return to the U.S. scene. Aiden and Grotto wins.
Wow. I can't, it's a reasonable enough prediction that it makes sense, but I can't lie. There's a small piece of me that's like, would he be saying this if Aiden didn't make the comment? I mean, the world may never know. Anyways, Kaleb, what's your take on this one? Who you got in X30?
Austin Garrison to win the championship and Austin Garrison to win the race. I got probably Ryan second. And ADT third and Grotto fourth, Keeble fifth, or Carr, whichever one. Also, congrats to Harley, who had a really good showing at the World Champs a couple weeks ago. Huge shout out to Harley. That was a pretty badass drive by him.
Yeah, drove from 25th into the top 10 in the final. Very impressive stuff from the Brit. So we were both a bit wrong on the championship standings earlier, Alex. It was 196 points between Alessandro De Tullio and Austin Garrison. It was 270 to Ryan Norberg. That is how I got the 270 number in my head. Norberg's fourth, Pauly's third, De Tullio's second, and Garrison is first. We're going to talk about bold. We saw Ryan Norberg close a 90-point gap at the SCUSA Pro Tour when 300 points were on offer. If you look at the percentages, the amount of points on offer, it's a bit more at USPKS, but the percentage is roughly similar to the deficit he had. The field size is not in his favor. I'm going to pick Ryan Norberg to win this race at Newcastle. I think he gets it done to end off Pro Tour, or to end off the United States Pro Kart Series on the right foot. As far as the championship goes, I think it'll be closer at the end, but ultimately I can't quite go with Norberg. 270 points is a lot. And I think ultimately Austin Garrison wins the championship. As far as other guys in the race, I expect a good race from Aiden Ingrata. I think he'll be one that will be all the way up at the front of the field on his RPG Cosmic. I expect Garrison to be up there as well. I'll take those two to round out your podium in second and third, or at least the guys standing on the box. A couple other guys that could be worth watching as well. Austin Olds, another trip to the X30 ranks. We saw him have a lot of speed at Cincinnati. We've seen him be up front at all the 125cc stuff that he's done since transitioning over there. And then also a couple other names. Again, you mentioned Harley Keeble. Brandon Carr should be up front as well. I'll go with Paulie to finish fourth and Brandon Carr to finish on the final top 5 positions. So that's the X30 side of things. Real quickly, close battle in KA as well. You've got Cooper Shipman winning the championship by only about 30 points over AJ Myers. In this one, who do you guys have winning the championship? Alex, I'll start with you.
AJ Myers. We're going to Newcastle. Give me AJ Myers.
And I got it real quick. I got it flipped actually. It's AJ ahead by 20 as opposed to Cooper ahead by 30. So
give me AJ Myers. And I think Cooper Shipman's put on a heck of a championship drive. And I don't want to count him out, one bit. I just think we're going to Newcastle. AJ Myers leading the championship. He wants that single speed championship, and I think he's going to get it.
Kaleb, thoughts?
Cooper Shipman won this layout last year, didn't he?
He did. It's a good pull.
There's my answer.
Was AJ Myers in that race?
He was, actually.
Where'd he
No,
finish?
he was not. No,
I was going to say, it was a shifter.
He wasn't in that
He was
race.
in shifter.
Yeah.
That's
He was in
right.
the ship race.
He ran.
But Cooper, I really think Cooper's going to do good here.
I think it's going to be a really good race because Shipman's been fast here, and AJ's obviously fast at Newcastle.
Yeah, it's going to be close. It's going to be close.
It's going to come down to that future race.
But I think Cooper's got a really good shot. So,
No, I agree. I think it'll be close between the two of them. AJ has not found a way to get that win in KA so far this season. I think that changes this weekend. I think it's gonna be close. I think there's always gonna be 10 or 15 guys in the mix. We'll see Fernando Luque up there. I mean, you got guys like Mick Gabriel coming back. Eli Warren has always been fast at Newcastle. But you look at Newcastle over the last 10 years, you have 9 Pro Tour victories for AJ Myers, not even counting anything he's done in the last year that he ran USPKS and Shifter or King of the Castle, what have you. So AJ's been dominant. It's a different battle in KA, but I think he wins the championship. The race, well, it's a lottery, but for simplistic sake, I'll go with AJ to win the race as well and wrap up the championship. So, boys, it's been a long episode. We've seen a lot of good racing, or a lot of good discussion. We just got a comment from Braden Eves saying he's running double duty. Now, Brad, this is not something we've heard from anyone over the last week or so, but that would be exciting if that's true. If it's not true, he said he's done karting about 27 times this year.
he's not entered, so
If that's true, then give me Braden Eves. Give me Braden Eves to win the X30 race.
nah, he's washed.
If he
Not at Newcastle.
if that's true, I really hope that he got his engine program sorted out within the last month or so that he's had. But no, I expect, regardless of if Brad runs or not, I expect K is going to be fun. X30 should be a good race as well, with the chance to maybe see a swing in the championship, and ultimately we'll see how it goes down the line. Any last thoughts from you boys?
I hope Brad's running. That'll be cool.
Yeah, I hope Brad is running. It's been a while, and I said he was washed. Definitely not true, but prove me wrong either way. Yeah, he was close last year on getting a win in X30 Pro and in both in KE Senior. So if he does come back, then that'd be cool to see.
Absolutely. Well, it's been another episode. Can't stop it, man. One of these days. Episode 28, KC Grid Talk. We had 2 great interviews tonight. We have a very fun race coming up this weekend. The final round of the final regular season race, really, because everything after this point is standalone events. So it's been a great season to this point. Can't wait to be back to recap it all next week. And we will see you again next Tuesday for episode number 29 of KC Grid Talk. But for myself, Emory Lida, Alexander Stroll, Kaleb Yes, you guys next week.